Good afternoon, everybody. This is Don again. It is time for episode 33 of Practical Reality. It's Sunday afternoon around 3:20 or so. It is wicked hot. So hot. It's not even that. It's not only like 82 degrees, but it's so humid. It's ridiculous. Just like last week, it's like soup out there. If I try to sit in the grass, I'm going to have the bugs all over me, interrupting me, disturbing my train of thought. So here I am sitting in the car again. I was at the beach yesterday. It's funny, at the beach yesterday, I just couldn't think of anything really to talk about. And then part of what this video is going to be about is I had sort of an epiphany. And we're going to discuss that as we move along here today. The subject of today's video, and this is what part of the epiphany was, is your personal evolution. Of course, my personal evolution. What is it and how you define it? And have you ever thought about it? You know, the thing that really struck me when I was thinking about this earlier this morning is that people make plans for everything. They plan for their future. They plan for, at some point they plan for their death. At some point they plan for their fitness. They plan to lose weight. They plan to get a new job. They have actions that they take towards all of these, for all these plans to reach their goals. And then it came to me that people don't really have a plan for their own personal evolution. You talk to everybody about spirituality, and what is the most common answer that you get? I'm on a journey. I'm on a spiritual journey. And that's great, but how do you define a journey? In order to be on a journey, you have to have a destination. And most people that I speak to about spirituality are always willing to tell me that they're on a journey. But I've never even thought to ask the question before, what is your destination? And I just started to ask myself that question this morning. What is my destination? So that is what we are going to talk about today. And I think that is an incredibly interesting topic. And it's funny, what I was thinking about today is that I'm running out of ideas for videos. And now having this idea gives me a lot of material for videos going along, because I plan on sort of documenting my own journey and hopefully reaching the destinations which I have set out for myself. And these are not physical destinations. These, of course, are spiritual destinations and emotional, sort of, I guess you could say, destinations. Things that I set up for myself that I can measure progress, that I can say to myself, okay, now I know that here I am, I've made progress on my spiritual journey, and I've reached a certain place. And of course, even reaching that place isn't necessarily the end of the journey either. Because as human beings, of course, we all know that we're going to backslide, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to forget what we learned, at least some of it. And then you have to catch yourself in the act of forgetting, of not being aware, of unconsciousness, and bring yourself back to the point where you were. And the only way that you can actually do that and have the awareness to recognize that you were somewhere and you want to get back there is to get there in the first place, which makes logical sense, doesn't it? So who are you as a person? You can achieve all of these other goals. Let's just say you plan to get a new job, and you get a new job. And you think to yourself, when you start to search for this new job, before you get it, you're saying to yourself, I'm going to be so happy when I get this job. Or if I lose 30 pounds, wow, I'm going to be ecstatic. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to be ecstatic on the journey. When the journey starts, you have to envision the result. You have to envision the new job, that slimmer waistline, that smaller dress size, my fitting into the jeans or the shorts I wore 10 years ago, this kind of thing. That is the actual awareness. That is the beginning. That is the spiritual journey in its essence. You become a spiritual person by becoming aware of the fact that you must envision having it before you actually do have it. Making it a part of your consciousness, a part of your presence, a part of your awareness every single day so that you are now on that journey, but you know the destination. You have that destination in mind. You can feel it, you can taste it, you can touch it, you can envision it, you can see it before you. That is a journey. That journey has a destination. You now know where you're going. You can envision it, you can feel it, you can say, yes, I have it. And all that's necessary now is to execute the plan, which is the same with any other plan that you have. You take action to execute the plan and bring yourself to the point where you now feel you have made the journey and you have arrived at a destination. So no, I'm calling this journey my personal evolution, and you can call it your own personal evolution. And what does evolution mean? Okay? Evolution is change. Now, obviously, if you are the kind of person who doesn't want to accept the theory of evolution as fact, then fine. I can't reach you, and it's not my responsibility to reach you. But we have all evolved from the first little piece of, whatever it was that crawled out of the ocean onto the sand, and, instead of having gills, started to grow lungs, okay? That's evolution. Everything that has ever existed has evolved from an earlier form. And so how do you then evolve? If you look at the history of evolution of species, all of those species went through stages of development, okay? And that's, when I did the research for this video, that's exactly what I found online, that you are going to go through stages. And I can list for you the stages, which are like, first of all, like awareness, okay? Then the decision to make this journey, then the fear that comes along with it, okay? That fear of being uncomfortable, that fear of failure, okay? And I even saw somebody mention the fear of success. What happens to you when you get everything that you want? Which is a very important question. There are people out there who achieve all these things, all this material things that they want. And have they actually spiritually evolved? They are just as unhappy when they get all of the things that they wanted, because they have not spiritually evolved. And when they get the things that they wanted, the next thing they want is more. They just want more and more and more. They never reach a state of personal satisfaction. And that is unconsciousness. You can tell yourself you're going to be happier when you lose that 30 pounds, when you get that new job, when you meet that new woman or that new man, you're going to be happier. But then what comes along with all of that achievement can leave you just as unhappy as you were when you started, unless you have a plan for personal evolution. So that is why it's just as important to set a goal for yourself on your spiritual journey and say, okay, this is what I'm going to achieve. And you feel it. It's the same as I've said in many, many other videos. It's the internal environment. Are you in control of your internal environment? Or is the external environment controlling you? So if you are on this journey and you set these goals, then you feel them inside acutely every single day. And that is the control of the internal environment that leads you to the destination of the goals that you set for yourself on this spiritual journey. And as I was reading all of these stages, I saw stages in like 3 different articles that I pulled up on personal evolution. I'm thinking to myself, yes, it's great. You can lay out all these stages, but as I said a few minutes ago, you are a human being. So you're not going to necessarily achieve all these stages and move forward in your spiritual journey, even in your personal journey. You may lose, let's just say you lose the 30 pounds. Let's just say you meet a new person. Let's just say you get a new job. And let's just say that a year later, you don't have any of that stuff anymore. You've gained back the weight, you've lost the job, and you've lost your new boyfriend or your new girlfriend. So where are you? Okay? Which is another reason why it's so important to recognize that the goals you set for yourself on your spiritual journey define the destination. Which is why the feeling of it, the awareness, that deep-seated awareness and consciousness of what you're feeling, of the internal environment, the control of the internal environment and the regulation of that environment is so important, because then the happiness that you have, the satisfaction you achieve, the satisfaction you gain from these achievements is already there. So if you happen to not get the job, or you get the job and lose it, or the new boyfriend or girlfriend doesn't work out, or you regain the weight, you're not back to where you were before, saying, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. I can't do anything. I can't do anything right. Degrading yourself, putting yourself down. You don't get back to that stage because you've taken the journey and set the destination, which is the regulation of your internal environment and other concrete goals that you can set for yourself that you can't necessarily measure in dollars. You can't necessarily measure in pounds. You can't necessarily measure in dates. You have to measure them emotionally. And that's what's so important to recognize. So now I'm going to give you some examples from my own life. And tracking my own personal evolution, the destination of my spiritual journey, is now going to be the subject of at least the next few videos anyway. You know what I mean? So let's just say the things that I want to achieve. The number one thing that I want to achieve is to be more patient, especially with my wife. My wife comes from a completely different culture. She does not perceive time in the same way that I do. Okay? I am constantly saying, let's go, come on. Can you please hurry up? That kind of stuff. It's not productive. It bothers her. She thinks I'm nagging her. I'm really not trying to nag her. I just want things done in a more efficient manner. And that's a problem. So I have to learn to relax. I have to learn to just let it go. And it's like that book from David Deida that we discussed in my men's team like 4 or 5 months back now. Being the rock in the river. The water is all around you. There's little eddies and there's waves and there's other stuff that might, if you weren't a strong rock, you might get just swept up in it and swept away. But if you are the rock that can stay steady, then the river flows around you and you remain in place. And it doesn't affect you. You remain whole. So that's number one. Be more patient with my wife. Be more patient, not feeling like I have to hurry all the time. I think I've mentioned in previous videos when I get in the car sometimes and I turn on Waze and it says, okay, it'll take me 22 minutes to get to my destination. So I look at the clock and see what time it is and I say, okay, here we go. Bam. And I'm like on a race. Am I going to make that 22 minutes or not? It's like, oh. Yesterday, when I went to the beach, I didn't do it. And I actually enjoyed the ride to the beach. I didn't feel like I had to rush. I didn't feel like I was in a rush. And I got to the beach and parked and walked up to the water. And it took maybe 10 minutes longer than usual. And that's not because I was in a different state of mind. It's just the circumstances. But the fact that it took me 10 minutes longer than usual didn't bother me. I didn't let it bother me. I didn't let it say, oh, now I have to hurry to get up to the beach. That kind of thing. Didn't happen. I let it go. And that's so important. So let's talk about other sort of goals that I have as the destination of my spiritual journey. So I have 4 other goals written down in my notebook right here. And I'm just going to read the 4 of them out and then just go over them for a minute or two. Number 1, I can forgive myself. That is huge. The guilt and the shame that I felt for years over what happened to me, the circumstances I put myself in as a result of being completely unconscious. That was the very first step in my journey, which happened more than 20 years ago. I forgave myself for everything I did. And you cannot be free unless you forgive yourself. Align your heart and mind. Okay. So what does that mean, align your heart and mind? It means when you think about something, how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel afraid? Then your heart and mind are not aligned. Does it raise your vibration? When you envision that 20 pounds lost and you say, wow, that's going to be great. I'm going to wear, different clothes. I'm going to have to go buy a new wardrobe, whatever. Or does the feeling of fear arise in you and you say, oh God, I can't lose 20 pounds. Christ, it's going to be so friggin' hard. That kind of stuff. That is misalignment of your heart and mind. You cannot, unless your heart and mind are aligned, then your goals are going to be so much tougher to achieve. Because thinking it and feeling it, aligning your heart and mind together is essential for the achievement of your goals. Accepting change as inevitable. It's funny that when I thought of this one, the first thing that came to my mind was Sheldon Cooper in The Big Bang Theory. He hated change. They made so much great comedic material out of the fact that Sheldon Cooper hated change. One time he even got on a train and rode around the country for a couple months buying hot dogs because he hated change. You don't have that option, generally speaking. You have to accept change as inevitable. It is inevitable and it will happen and you cannot stop it. So, resisting change is resisting of life. You are not a complete person. You will never be a complete person unless you accept change as inevitable. And I have to be that same way. And the fourth one is be willing to make yourself uncomfortable. How does change occur? Change occurs when you step outside of your comfort zone. And that's not easy to do. And I got to say, for me, that's probably the toughest one. That's probably the toughest one because I'm sort of like, routine. I have told so many people before that I'm a slave to my routine. And that's wrong. That's just wrong. I am not serving myself well by telling myself that I'm a slave to my routine and believing it. Okay? To be the best version of yourself, that should be the underlying basis of your entire spiritual journey and the destination. All of the goals that you set for yourself simply mean that you then become the best version of yourself that you can be. And having that overall riding goal, along with these other, like you could call them sub-goals, in your mind on a daily basis, that is how you achieve your personal evolution. And I would like everyone to think about this. Start making a list like I did of what you want to achieve. Imagine how it's going to feel when I'm not in a rush all the time. That's not easy. I can do it sometimes. And this is what I mean by the stages that I saw everybody writing about being fluid. They're fluid because you're not going to, once you get to a certain point, you may slide back. You may have to do it over again. You may have to repeat it. But the fact that you know that you're there and you're repeating it and it has to be done again shows that you've gained the awareness to know that is necessary. And that's a big step in your personal evolution. So take it and don't be afraid and make sure that you stay on the path and remind yourself of your goals every single day. And remind yourself that the overall goal is being the best version of yourself on a daily basis. You serve yourself and you serve every other single person in your life when you present yourself as the best version of yourself on a daily basis. Thank you all. That was fun. I really enjoyed this one and I'm going to enjoy detailing my personal evolution for you as we go along. Like, comment, and subscribe. Love you all. Have a great, beautiful day.